Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining our 6th annual PROJILITY Virtual Project Conference. We're super excited to have you join us for this session to help you and your teams learn more from clients and state and local government agencies and their lessons learned with planning and deploying Microsoft project management solutions. Let's get started. My name is Annie Levand, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called PROJILITY. We have been implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management solutions for over 19 years for federal, state, and local government agencies, everything from engineering, construction, IT, and operations project management. PMOs and CIOs typically come to us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports, metrics, and dashboards to make project decisions. We're known for having a 90% on-time, on-budget track record for success. Additionally, PROJILITY services are available on multiple federal, state, and local government contracts, including GSA IT-70, NASPO, Texas DIR, California CMAS, and Omnia. We offer services and solutions in 3 core areas: deployment and consulting services, PROJILITY's core business. We provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft Project Portfolio Management, including Microsoft Project Online, Project for the Web Soon-to-Be Planner, integrating PPM with a line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. PROJILITY also offers a set of Hammerhead pre-built software solutions on accelerators based upon over 19 years of experience, including solutions that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, connect data between your PPM system with Microsoft Teams, and extend connectivity into Active Directory. New to our offerings is Hammerhead Power Pro, which is a pre-built solution crafted on the foundation of the Microsoft Power Platform and the new Microsoft Planner. This offering is designed to help bring some of our lessons learned on this platform to your organization. Finally, PROJILITY provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on the solution supported. We have a full online automated e-learning offering that can improve access to your adoption of your users and your project management tools. You can learn more about all of our services and solutions on our shiny new website, PROJILITY.com. For today's agenda, we're first going to go through some of the logistics for the session, including how to ask questions and availability of content. We'll then jump into our first session. You'll be hearing from 2 of our clients, City of Auburn, Alabama, and the State of North Dakota's Health and Human Services team, who will share their experiences and successful strategies for implementing Microsoft project management technologies. You'll gain looks into how they are using their solutions to improve visibility, insight, and control over projects of portfolios, as well as providing access to key stakeholders, both internal and external, to their agencies. After that, we've got a highly requested session delivered by one of PROJILITY's partners, focused on sharing good practices for helping you drive better planning, use, and ultimately good adoption of these solutions. You'll learn how to best prepare for a rollout no matter what stage you are in today. We'll close out the day by providing you some useful links to content. Now for some housekeeping. After each speaking session, we'll have a Q&A session. If you have a question, please type them into the questions and answer box at the top of your team screen. We'll ask our speakers to answer your questions after each of their sessions and collectively. Today's session will be recorded, so you can revisit the content and share with your colleagues. After the webinar, you'll receive a link to the recording of today's event and a follow-up email. It will also be posted on our YouTube channel. Copies of today's session will be made available for anyone requesting them. You can send an email to the link on the page for a copy. Finally, at the end of today's session, we'll ask you to complete our survey to share your feedback to influence future sessions like these. To kick off the presentation section of today's conference, the project management leads from City of Auburn, Alabama, and the State of North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services will be sharing some background on their organizations. They'll jump right in, discuss their experiences and good practices they've each had deploying, supporting, and driving good use and adoption of their project and portfolio management systems. As shared, if you have questions, please log them into the questions and answer dialog box at the top of your team screen, and we'll address those towards the end of each presentation. With that, we're going to hand the floor over to Chris and Steve from the City of Auburn, Alabama. Chris and Steve have been leading the effort within the city for the past few years to improve on their overall project planning, delivery, and reporting across key city investment projects. Chris, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, as I jump back to the very beginning of our presentation, or afternoon or evening.
Thanks. We're happy to walk everyone through the City of Auburn's journey toward a solution for our project management and our experience with PROJILITY. We'll go over the course of that journey, starting with identifying our problem, challenges that we faced, lessons we learned along the way, and continue to learn to this day still, and a road ahead now that we've lived in the project management solution for a couple of years. A little bit about us and the City of Auburn. We're located in Eastern Alabama and probably best known nationally for Auburn University. Historically, we've been a major college town, but in the past couple of years, we've transitioned to a mid-sized city with a major college. So I'm Stephen Kranz. I've been the budget and strategic planning manager with the city for the past 4 years. And prior, I had several years of experience working in the financial analysis side of project management and defense contracting. Fun fact about myself is that despite being from Alabama and living here now, I have lived in 7 other states.
And I'm Chris Graff. I'm the Deputy CIO at the City of Auburn. I guess in that role, I'm managing a number of different teams, from the city's mapping team to solution development to enterprise system integrations. I guess I've been here for about a little over 18 years now, and having worn a lot of hats. I guess kind of a fun fact about me, I played competitive tennis for forever and ever, and then moved on, and now I've got a 12-year-old who's spanking my butt, honestly, on the tennis court, and I'm trying to grab some of those glory days. But I guess kind of thinking about that in the IT space as well. I now have a pretty amazing team that's much more sophisticated than I ever was, and so hopefully we can show off a little bit of kind of where the team has kind of surpassed where we used to be.
So the City of Auburn is rapidly growing. As we mentioned about quickly going from a major college town to a mid-sized city. Between the 2010 and 2020 census, you can see we grew about 23,000 people, and currently we add an average about 5 people a day. With that growth came the explosion in our capital project budgeting. You can see how much our budget for capital projects jumped, especially between 2017 and 2019. We needed to invest in the expanded infrastructure to support this growth, such as roads, water, and sewer, renovate and expand facilities, increase parks, recreation fields, and all of our recreation complexes, all to meet the needs and wants of the growing community and provide quality public services. As a note, during this time of growing capacity, we did so with smart growth of city staff. Boils down to us being good stewards of taxpayer funds. We determined that a technological solution was the preferred path for our project management. At the time, we weren't just looking for a solution for then, but a solution that could grow with us in the future. The big problem we had was disconnection in our project information. I'll walk you through some of the examples of the data we monitored and where it was, the different places where it was housed. So here's a screenshot from InfoPath, which was updated by the project managers. It typically contained basic project information, status comments, sometimes construction photos, but was not available or accessed by everybody. Then we had our capital project spreadsheet. This isn't meant to be an eye test, but I wanted to show a zoomed out look at this massive manually updated spreadsheet that we did. It was maintained by the budget team. We would send out an email once a month requesting changes, and then once we got it back, we'd compile it, all the changes and updates from everybody into one spreadsheet. It tracked things like start and end dates for project phases. We tried to get the same status comments from InfoPath. And this was done on a monthly basis, but it took a couple weeks to finalize so that by the time it was completed and sent out to city management, likely the data was already out of date. If you were looking for up-to-date project expenditures and encumbrances, you had to go to our accounting software, Munis, which is maintained by the finance team. And again, this is something that just not everyone had access to. The most accurate place to see project budgets was in the city's latest budget document. There's a partial look at our 6-year capital project outlook. Budgets are requested by project managers and city departments using PDF forms, which were then collected and compiled into this 6-year outlook. Reviewing submitted project ideas was difficult because it could be dozens of PDF files that contain data for each of the projects that the city manager needed to make her decisions and see what would be approved and slated. Another thing that's not meant to be an eye chart, but the engineering department largely maintained a master schedule for all of our projects in one Microsoft project file. This was internal to the department, so it was pretty siloed data. Because the work was done by the contractors, we typically track dates by high-level tasks such as design, construction, et cetera, which the dates and information is provided by the contractors. So with all that to say, this led us to the problem of stakeholders not having access to all the project information, at least easily and timely. This led to us, or the city, this led to projects being difficult to manage and report on from the city standpoint. And not being timely, it was difficult to gather all the information to assess the health of our projects and be able to make good financial decisions, again, as trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. The ultimate problem wasn't that we didn't have all the data, but it was all over the place and not accessible by all the stakeholders. We realized we needed a solution that had a one-stop shop system to house all this data. The challenge then became, what did that look like? Who would be responsible for updating which data, and what would the outputs be? Then came the question of, once we would have a place with all the data, how did the right stakeholders get the right data and in a timely manner? Many of our stakeholders have access to PWA, and their roles allow them to access the information directly. Others are able to get the data in the form of reports that are sent out during capital project reviews during meetings. Jumping ahead a little bit, we have received some feedback from citizens saying that this is very helpful in knowing what's going on in the city, especially when it comes to facilities that the public will eventually end up utilizing. City departments not involved with projects directly have stated that they feel more informed and have a better understanding of the status of current projects. For example, we hold a quarterly capital project meeting review with city management, PMs, and other department representatives. We quickly went from a dysfunctional quarterly meeting where we spent the majority of the time updating the actual project information to highly constructive meetings using the project information that was already in PWA and easily available to the team. Once we realized our problems and challenges, the buy-in for project management solution was actually pretty quick and easy from everyone involved. So now I'll hand it off to Chris to talk about the implementation, lessons learned, and where we're going from here.
Thank you, Stephen. So yeah, Stephen kind of described where we were and the headaches that we were living with. I guess so how then do we overcome those? I guess a little more background. We were also, as a city, we were a Microsoft shop. So it made sense for us to look at what Microsoft technology is out there that we could apply to this problem. Microsoft Project being kind of the solution that made that sense. Though us on the IT side, we're not super experienced with it at an enterprise level. And really that's where PROJILITY came in, where us engaging them back in 2019, 2020, looking for a partner that knows Microsoft, that has experience with local government and the unique challenges that we have serving our citizens, and really someone that could come in and really kind of meld to a strategy that we were trying to take, and really that was we needed to keep it simple. Technology is here to empower our users' processes. We want to spend our time thinking about those processes and how people can do the best work they can do. We were leaning on PROJILITY to take the technology, the hurdles of the technology out of the equation. So we kind of began this journey building the solution, wanting to kind of follow the crawl, walk, run process. We didn't want, again, that technology getting in our way, being tripped up by it. So as we built this thing, it was about how do we get that bare minimum built and in place, and users adopting it and enjoying it, and then actually asking for how do we make it more sophisticated. So again, PROJILITY was kind of that ability for them to take that journey with us to help us kind of honor that crawl, walk, run strategy. The way they were able to come in and describe the choices we needed to make without complicating it with the technological jargon or obstacles or hurdles that we were going to have to sort out. They were able to kind of shelter us from that, so we could, again, focus on the decisions, focus on the people and the processes. And then just kind of as an example of that, one of the things we really struggled with early on was how do we go from a project idea into an actual project? And for us, this had been a PDF form that folks fill out. It kind of gets shuffled into a bunch of cards, and staff are kind of manually looking through those and trying to make a decision, trying to build what would eventually become our CIP portfolio. Once making that CIP portfolio then would be transitioned into a project. I think we probably had all kinds of wild ideas of how technology could make that a much more robust solution for us, but really kind of one of the things PROJILITY helped with was not just robust, but an elegant solution. And so we went with that, very minimal basic workflows, but at each step kind of capturing the bare minimum pieces of information. Over time, those pieces got more and more fleshed out, so that ultimately, when we're building a CIP portfolio, the decision makers at the table have all the information that they need. As those decisions get made and finalized, very simple mechanisms to then roll those ideas into actual actionable projects. Then us working through actual budget cycles, we're able to see, is that solution working for us? Yes or no. If it's not, then make tweaks. And so again, crawl, walk, run, continually iterating on these ideas, refining them into the solutions that we're working with today. So kind of what we're working with, we're working with a single source, PWA, hopefully something like Project Center here. This screenshot is familiar to everybody. It is our authoritative source. It's the place that our PMs are working from, curating the data and consuming when they need kind of the raw, full, robust data set. But we recognize not all of our users need to function in this space. And like Stephen had mentioned earlier, we're using lots of reports and views of the data outside of the PWA system to really tell a story of a project, a collection of projects, or the entire portfolio. And so these reports then become kind of the narrative or the story, if you will, to the different audience. They're told in such a way that that particular audience is able to grab what they need to quickly, efficiently, and move forward. So what we're looking at here is a status report that project managers or supervisors who need to see a fair bit of the detail can come in, can look at this, can see without tunneling through all the clicks and forms and whatnot that you might have in PWA. But all that data is available in a relatively easy to consume view. Also happening here is we're integrating data from our financial system, marrying that up with the data that's in PWA, again, to give that full story to whoever that audience might be. So another kind of narrative we're telling, another story that we're telling is through these project fly sheets. These fly sheets were kind of designed on our end to be a single high-level view of any particular project. Kind of that critical content that could be publicly facing, and it really kind of coming from the perspective of this is an object, this is a story that can be embedded into other narratives. So this fly sheet might get included in updates to a board or elected officials. It might be included into a PowerPoint for a budgeting session or a project session. So again, kind of same data, it's all coming from the same source in PWA, but we're kind of tweaking that narrative, tweaking that story based off of who the audience is. So we have this fly sheet. We had intended that we were going to put this fly sheet out on the city's website out for the public to consume. But our city manager really challenged us. How can we be more dynamic with this data? How can we engage our citizens to a more extreme degree than just kind of static PDFs of a project that are maybe updating on a monthly cycle? So we took that challenge and came up with the city's CIP website, and I'm going to challenge my technical abilities, and we're going to jump directly to it and take a live demo of this thing. So if anyone did want to check it out, it's auburnalabama.org/capital improvement projects or alabama.org/CIP for short. But what it is, it's kind of a card-based design highlighting typically construction projects, large capital projects that are going to have a very, very public impact, whether it's a new library or a new rec center or a new street. And this data being fed, again, out of PWA, it's the exact same content that was in all those reports or that the PMs have direct hands-on access to. But now, again, curating that narrative for a new audience, for the public, we try to focus on the visuals, on quick nuggets of information that's easy for that citizen to digest. And so we have active projects. We also have spaces for upcoming projects and for completed projects. These more or less give a similar look and feel, just with slightly different content as that content's available or not available. We expect users to come in here, sort based off of what fits their interests, come in, find a project, and really kind of dig into it. So I'm going to click on this Donahue campus project, and what we see, we get an overview of the project. We see how that project is related to the city's master plans. Again, all of this coming out of PWA, budget information, dates, schedules, contact information, all the way down to the project manager. For the City of Auburn, having people and faces behind the work that the city does is very important. So we do try to be forward with who a project manager is, to the extent that we've got a picture, we've got contact information. If someone wanted to call Allison and get details about this project, we want to be engaging with the public. We want them to know that we're people working for them. So we try to tell that narrative in that way. But again, just kind of using bold graphics, colors, imagery. We want to illustrate this project is early in the stage, so it's more of a concept of the project, and give that citizen an idea of how their tax dollars are being spent. As projects come further underway, those visuals transition from being kind of conceptuals to life on the ground in near real time. This photograph is probably yesterday, actually. So again, keeping people up to date, telling them the story of how we're using their taxpayer dollars, how we're benefiting the city, how we're making the city a better place. But all of this without burdening staff needing to come in here and update web pages, needing a webmaster curating this. Again, this is all content that our PMs are generating in their day-to-day operation execution of these projects. And then just through views and scripts, the data is harvested and exposed to the public in this format. So that kind of represents where we are today with PWA. We're finding a lot of success, as Stephen mentioned, when we sit down in our quarterly meetings. The conversations are no longer about how do we get all the data in front of all the right people. The conversations are how do we improve our processes, how do we manage projects better, how do we look out for upcoming obstacles or impediments, and how do we move not just our project management forward, but our process of project management forward. And so kind of talking about some of the things we're interested in, we're kind of focused on moving forward. Cash flow modeling right now, a lot of our modeling is based off of the fiscal year being the unit of time. And we undertake a CIP, and all the funds for that project are encumbered for that fiscal year, but we don't spend it all in a single instance in time. Projects are phased out. We're spending money. We're budgeting money per specific phases of that project. And so we want to be able to model that reality a little bit better. So we're looking at ways that we can integrate, again, both what we're doing in PWA, but also what we're doing on the financial side to accumulate both budget numbers and actual numbers, be able to model kind of that cash flow for a project, be able to then scale that up to multiple projects, and then ultimately with that goal of just kind of better fiscal year budgeting, better capacity planning of both staff and financial resources. So today we're kind of working on this in a very manual, singular project type way, but again, kind of that crawl, walk, run philosophy. We're looking at how we scale that up, how we leverage the data that's already in the system to do this work for us. So ultimately, our job is interpreting the data rather than putting the data together. Another project we're working on is putting these projects on the map. And so what we're looking at in front of us is a proof of concept that we're working on, where each of the icons on that map is a capital project. A user can click on that, see that same detail we were looking at on the website, or that you would be looking at in PWA. You can see it there on the map as well. There's a link in that pop-up that will then take you to the public website where you can get even more context, or vice versa from that the CIP website, you could then link to the map and get the spatial context. As someone zooms in on this map, those square icons would translate into the actual project boundaries, so people could get a really fine-grained look at what's going on and where it's going on. And then ultimately, road ahead, we're continuing to modernize our data capture, data manipulation, data massaging methods. So we're looking at how do we empower our inspectors and our project managers while they're in the field. Currently, they capture data, bring it back to the office, then input off the data in the back office into the system. We really want them doing that in the field, in real time. We're looking at ways to leverage teams, to empower collaboration, greater collaboration between project managers and their resources. And yeah, just looking at the platform in general, how are we capturing data? How are we storing data? How are we retrieving data? And how can we do that better? So again, kind of living with that crawl, walk, run. I think we're probably maybe in a jogging maturity level right now. I think we're getting close to that stride where we're really running flat out. But I think what's been exciting for me from the technology space is we are at that place where it's the end users that are now coming to us asking for these enhancements. It's not us trying to push change onto project managers. It's their ideas that we're seeing bringing into practice, bringing into reality. So that brings us to the end of our piece of the conversation. Annie, I don't know if you want to take questions now or if we were going to wait till later to take the questions.
Well, great presentation. Thanks to you both. We actually do have a question for the two of you right now from Keith. To confirm, those web-based public-facing project pages are fed by project management data in real time via standard project management practices processes, correct?
Yes, so whether their updating rhythm is once a week or once every couple of weeks, whenever they get a accurate update from the contractor, they'll go in and put it in PWA, and it actually updates the website once a day overnight. We can push it, so if we have a vital update that needs to be put out quicker, then the IT team can push it faster.
Any other questions before we move on? Well, next up, we'll be handing things off to Steve and Ben, who've led an effort at the State of North Dakota Health and Human Services Department to improve their overall project and portfolio management in the department. So Steve and Ben, over to you. Got your slides up, look nice.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can see our slide. Try to be as colorful as possible to shock everyone out of that mid-afternoon lurch that happens from lunch. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Welty. I have the privilege of being able to present with my boss, Stephen here, about North Dakota's HHS project management efforts that we are undertaking, specifically through the use of Project for the Web. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to head over to Stephen to introduce him. I'm a data transformation manager working underneath the office of the Deputy of Commissioner within HHS. HHS is the Health and Human Services Agency for North Dakota. A little neat fact for me is that for those that are familiar with bowling, I'm able to hold a consistent score of 54 with all my bowling. For those that know bowling, that is really, really good, I'm sure. Stephen, I'm going to hand it over to you. And while Stephen's coming off mute, one of the things I'd like to highlight about North Dakota and our Health and Human Services is that our focus is providing services that range from a wide gamut within our public health, behavioral health, and even human services. Things like epidemiology services, clinical trials, elderly child care, disability services, and improvements. Really, the goal and hope there is to make North Dakota the healthiest state in the nation. We hope to have a fostering of positive, comprehensive outcomes that are going to promote a various economic, behavioral, and physical health and a holistic approach to the individual in our community and our state's well-being. This is underscored by the incredible work that is being held and underway across the agency and HHS today. Um, but obviously, to do those various programs, to do that work, requires a set office, a set team, and that's where Steve certainly helps shepherd in a lot of that.
Good afternoon. Ben, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, my friend.
Hey, all right. See, I just needed to be diligent with buttons and unmuting. Great to be with you. Thanks, Ben. Great introduction. I'm Steve Burgess with the Transformation Office at North Dakota Health and Human Services. Get to work with Ben every day on tackling the complex, interesting, exciting problems and challenges that the largest state agency of North Dakota runs into. The Transformation Office, I often say, Ben and I are absolutely spoiled rotten. We get to do all the fun stuff. We get to work in projects and help teams think through what's the best way to approach my issue that I want to solve for the citizens and clients in North Dakota. So we are a supportive PMO role for Health and Human Services. We also deal extensively in change management, which is more and more is becoming really the determination of success or not in our projects. Is great change management, folks understanding how things affect them, not only in the public side, internally to our teams, and our stakeholders that we work with every day. And then thirdly, we work a lot in process redesign. We have favorite flavors of process improvement methodologies that we apply to our projects and change managements. And so we are, again, just absolutely privileged to get to be with you today. And I'm excited to talk to you about our project that has really transformed how we approach project management at Health and Human Services.
Well, I'd like to talk to you, Stephen, about that. When we are looking at, managing the scale of projects that are needed for Health and Human Services for the state, I assume that there's a litany of various considerations and challenges that you're having to consider and go through.
Absolutely. So, as we approached, how do we get really good at project management? I think we had to kind of take an assessment of where we were at as an agency. And so Ben and I are both recent additions in the last couple of years to HHS. And so, we really had the benefit of kind of coming in with fresh eyes and maybe some experiences from outside the agency. What we found was, really, Chris and Steve from Auburn had mentioned that crawl, walk, run model. We joke that we think we're probably still in the crib, and that at some point we have fallen out of the crib and we're still trying to figure out which way is up and how to crawl, things like that. And so, the question of how do you take a Health and Human Services agency that does not employ very many, if any at all, strict project manager roles or FTEs or staff. So Ben had kind of talked through the different divisions, we economic assistance, public health, human services, temporary assistance for needy families, Medicaid, behavioral health programs, and then operational divisions of finance, HR, comms, legal, our exec office. There's really nobody in there that you could point to and say, hey, this is our, our litany, our 50 deep roster of project managers. And so we wanted to really come at the concept of how do we get great at project management by saying, how do we empower the folks that work at HHS in those different divisions that may be program directors, policy experts, but don't play in the space of projects unless they, are trying to accomplish, a new project, new program, new IT system, something like that. How do we give them the tools, the know-how, the system, the processes, and the collaboration that will make them successful without having to make them, sit down and take time, take a year off, go through a PMP certification, get them PMP certified, and then get them working in an arcane project tool that they may have different nomenclature they're not familiar with. And so, as we kind of took that assessment, talked through, what is the need of our agency, with some things stood out, right? We know we needed to get really good on communication and collaboration. So we have cross-cutting teams across policy and program divisions that may not work with each other every day, right? We may not be working in that same space, but when projects arise, often we'll have cross-cutting teams that are from multiple divisions that we don't have normal communication with. So how do we make sure that everyone has that line of sight, right? You'll hear that term often from Ben and I when we talk about what's important to success, is having that line of sight to see, if this group is working on that and I'm on deck to start my work after they're done. How do I know that? How do we share information? How do we share progress? And so we were looking at, document sharing. How do we share one source of truth? How do we make sure that comments, steps, even on a task, we can share that? How do we make sure that we're not duplicating efforts? And so we are at the state of North Dakota. We do employ the Microsoft 365 environment across all of our different agencies. So we knew that we've already got a leg up, really, because we have the infrastructure to use some of the concepts like SharePoint, to use things like Azure, to use Office products and apps. And so we knew that that in itself was a benefit and maybe a way to ease the transition. So getting great on collaboration and communication.
Well, that really helped you narrow down on some of the key features that you needed, right? For being able to make a project management tool that could handle the wide swath of skill sets, from our clinic folks out in the field, all the way up to legislative leads and assistants and aides that are in the Capitol, even to lowly folks like myself, right? You were able to narrow down on a couple key areas, if I'm not mistaken.
We
as
were.
part of this assessment.
Yep, absolutely. So as we talked through, we know we needed to get there's key things that stood out that we know we need to have in hand, and folks are going to need in pocket before they begin these larger projects or smaller projects. We know that at the heart of it, project management, we like to take the magic out of it. So that's kind of another little joke there, is that at the end of the day, it's tasks. Projects are tasks. And so we use, big words like variance, schedules, and baselines that folks that may not deal in that space every day know. But at the end of it, it's just tasks and getting it done and making sure folks know who owns what. And so we wanted to do simplicity in task management, collaborative task management. How can I understand how my tasks are dependent on others' tasks? And to bucket those, to create categories for those, to create baselines, yes, dates, accountabilities, but at the end of the day, share that information with folks that may not be in a project management system every day. Visualization of timelines has been key to understand, where we're starting and where we're ending, what the definition of done and what the definition of success is for different categories of tasks, things like that. And then resources. All of that was lumped under project planning. It's just those basics of, if Ben and I are tasking folks, at 80 hours in a work week, we need to step back and take a look and say, hey, how is this going to happen? We can't make folks work 2 weeks in one. So how do we really get good on that? Collaboration, real-time updates. So we need systems that are available at a keystroke, that folks can jump into, understand what's expected of them, collaborate on a document, create edits, create different things that may be a problem that they see coming. How do they log that? Share files without duplication. Reporting, we know we needed to get really good on that. We know we needed robust information as to all of our different divisions. And so, it's interesting how, when we take a look at how an agency is broken out, we often call them divisions, or we call them sections or units. And so, that term division really suggests that there's a separation. And so, how do we share that understanding of work across those divisions? How do we share that understanding of what's happening and what's important to those different work groups in those divisions? And so we knew that sharing reporting that could drill down to information that's just important to me. We knew that sharing information for folks at an executive level needing to see the 30,000 foot view, but then also for something as simple as myself, Ben, and another one of our partners tackling a project together. How can we look at just that through our reporting? And so we wanted robust ways to look at all levels. Show me what's important to me. Give me my Monday morning screen that I can look at and understand, hey, this is what our team's tackling this week. We know that implementation is going to be key, right? So we needed a strategy to roll that out. How do we get people trained? How do we get people comfortable and move from comfort to command of a technology that can help them really track a project? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we're actually moving the dial? How do we understand, are we moving projects to progress, to success, to completion using this? So how are we measuring that? One of our favorite sayings is from Eli Goldratt, who said, tell me how you measure me, I'll tell you how I'll perform. And so we wanted to make sure we had metrics in place and ways to measure how things were getting done so that we could actually say, yes, this is a value add.
So I assume that there was a fairly exhaustive process in trying to find a right tool or something that would, again, have that intuitive nature to reach all of our various services and our division sections and so forth, as well as our users. And that's where I believe that our team really came to an understanding that Project for the Web was a best suited solution for us at that time. Again, you mentioned the seamless integrate, or there's a seamless integration with our already existing environment of Microsoft. We're a Microsoft shop, very much like others. We have Teams and the 365 productivity suite that we utilize, and so having something that could easily incorporate into that and not be a new trick, the same hat or old hat for others to learn. What were some of the other reasons that we kind of, that you found that you really gravitated towards the Project for the Web solution other than others? I mean, I know we
Yep.
have a listing here on the board, but were there any other major standouts?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So I kind of get soapboxy. That's a new term, by the way, I'm inventing right now in front of many people. I get soapboxy, thinking about, I'd mentioned taking the magic out of project management, right? And so when we looked at what is a tool that's going to be usable and accessible, I think of something that has a learning curve that is not steep. I think of a tool that has very similar or understandable formats that I see every day in my other office softwares that I'm using, right? I see something that really, it becomes almost a way to democratize the project management processes in a lot of way. For HHS, we are certainly a supportive PMO as opposed to a directive PMO. And so we want collaboration. We want team-based approaches. We want to help people set a vision and help them, make sure that they can build that out and be successful. And so really a tool that people could walk into, begin to use without, 40 hours of training, something that they have on their screen. They say, oh yeah, yep, I see this. I deal with very similar programs like this a lot. And so kind of that accessibility and the understanding that it's not a scary software to jump into really come to mind as terms of, softer requirements that are very important.
No, I know one of the things that we liked also about it was that there was a high level of customization that also was able to be incorporated in the project for the web, especially to make it fit HHS's need, as well as, help get some of that rooted, accessible project management understanding and skill sets so that it was a little bit of a point click. However, I don't know. My development skills are, nil. Steve, I don't know how savvy you are. So I think at that point, after our team was able to help kind of narrow in on that solution set, we also wanted to find a vendor and a partner. And I think that we found a trusted, relationship with PROJILITY. I'm curious, when you found that the selection of working with PROJILITY, what were some of the reasons that drove you towards leveraging their skills? I know that Annie had highlighted some of the many solutions and services that they offer, but what were some of the details that you found?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, our North Dakota had a relationship, and still it has a relationship, a longstanding relationship with PROJILITY. PROJILITY actually built the system that our state project management office, which is operated by our North Dakota IT department. PROJILITY partnered with NDIT is the acronym, and built out really the first PMO based system in the state. And so we had, in taking a look at, hey, how do you measure future success or predict future success? I always say look to the past. And PROJILITY had a great track record working with them. They ended up going with the Project Web app, as Auburn. Chris and Steve had talked about a similar format and similar function. We knew that we needed something with kind of that accessibility in mind, right? For program managers and policy directors, as opposed to folks that deal in the project management space. And so, just talking to NDIT and our partners that had worked with PROJILITY before, it became apparent that, really it's a swath of different options that we could look at. We saw that PROJILITY really had a great understanding of how to harness all those different Microsoft platform tools that are now really starting to puzzle piece themselves together, right? So Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, workflow, the different task and project monitoring concepts, and Planner, Project for the Web, Project Web App. And so we saw a partner there that could really, has worked with North Dakota, been successful with North Dakota, that we like to preserve our relationships, and so saw a real opportunity to continue that. And so, again, as we're trying to embrace really those workflow automation, things that cut down on clicks as opposed to increase, that make things more intuitive rather than more complex. We saw PROJILITY as a great partner to kind of take a look at and help us walk through that. And I think walking through that with some of their staff members, I think we learned a lot about the difference between what we want and what we need. I'd mentioned before that crawl, walk, run is something we're not quite at, or we were not at when we first started tackling this. We were in the crib or about to fall out of the crib. And so, working with them, I think we could see, we're asking for X, but really we need A, right? Or we're asking for something incredibly complex. And with their help and insight, we saw that, the root cause was something that we could tackle with, this workflow or this automation or this stage gating. And so really had the opportunity to pick their brains on how we could build a process where it didn't exist.
Now we've been live for several months now, and we've been starting to do a little bit of our what I call a walking tour of some of the divisions and agencies, doing that slow ramp up, that pilot to a slow sectional roll on to even now a division and an agency roll on. And over the last couple of months, we've also had a chance to do some reflection on what we've gone through this process. As we've selected a tool, and we started considering what is the best process, or the best practices for bringing project management, a consistent standard across our agency, and even hopefully further with the state. there was a lot of not, I wouldn't say heartaches, but a lot of learned lessons that we had, and a lot of assumptions that we had to take back and start considering as we move forward. So with the various lessons learned, and maybe some takeaways and suggestions that we would offer to other folks here, one of the things that I know you and I have talked about is look at the process, look at what we're trying to solve. What is it that you're trying to accomplish well before a solution or a tool or a magic bullet can come into play? That's probably been the biggest one that I've taken away, because I know a lot of folks want to gravitate towards a set tool or a technology to just fix it all. But you, as well as many of our other sectional leaders, have been able to help course correct that, because again, once you focus on that root customer, that root issue, it really kind of helps derive, what is the actual necessary steps to accomplish whatever your objective or goal is. That's been the biggest lesson learned that I've had. Was there any particular lesson that you took away from this implementation that really galvanized with you?
I'd echo that, Ben, 100%. Having a process in place and finding, where the already the bottlenecks or the issues, the constraints exist, was important. I would say, having clear expectations, clear understanding of, what people's role will be. The old saying is what, the tech is the easy part, the people part is difficult. And so really having that buy-in, via change management, I believe is kind of the make or break. If we don't have active and visible sponsorship, we can often land in a place where, rather than a full wide agency implementation, it becomes pockets of coalitions of the willing, right, or coalitions of the interested. And so we, as we broadly expand this system, as when we're bringing on different divisions, really having a full understanding of roles, responsibilities in the system, how to use it, making sure folks understand the why and understand the WIFM, right, or the what's in it for me, has been really important, I think.
Oh, absolutely. The WIFM, and that's patent pending, I believe, on that acronym, right, Steve?
If it's not, it should be by the end of this
Yes.
meeting.
But then also, I think what I find really great about the tool is, and again, with our partnership with PROJILITY, is that ability to continuously evolve, to continuously improve or adjust or make those micro course corrections. Because one thing that we all know about project management or even change management is nothing is consistent for the most part, right? There's always changes or additions or new asks and things that we need to be prepared and ready for. And so I'm very excited about what our potential future can lie. And again, I know that everybody talks about AI. I know that it's a huge thing, but I believe that that's something that we are, hoping to incorporate some AI powered, features for more, intelligent task prioritization, resource allocation, helping prevent me from maybe overbooking myself or others, and even doing like, risk assessment. Is there any particular future endeavor that, or future plan that, we have a listing here on the board between advanced analytics to greater cross department visibility to even developing those user champions, mini, well, I wouldn't call them mini because I'm a small guy, better versions of me out there. What is there any particular future plan that you're really excited about bringing into this?
Yeah, I am really excited about the different tools that may be available, as Microsoft apps evolve and AI becomes integrated, truly integrated, where we're seeing, some of the concepts that are in Copilot and embedding, AI capability within an app itself, right? How do you embed app in Office? How do you embed app in Project? How do you embed app or AI in those different things? And so I just see that more and more an evolution of kind of how we started with the system, Ben, is, really it's meant to be accessible. Take the learning curve out of project management. Don't make me a project management expert, but make it so that I can look like one, right? Um, Give me the tools to spin up, a rock solid work breakdown structure give me the tools to identify a risk or a timeline constraint, and act on that if I need to. So really AI integration, I see as something that's really exciting, and what that's going to look like, over the next few years as it starts to accelerate, how we can embed that to further empower, folks that are not project managers to be just as good, and to play in that same space as our project managers, and to feel confident doing it, I think is really important.
Well, I think it'd be great to give folks an idea and a demo of what we've done. We have, 2 environments that we'd like to show our sandbox, and I'd even, if time allows, and Annie, I'm going to ask you to keep me honest on our time here as we go through a quick demo of what we've done here, if that's suitable for our folks. So again, one of the big things that we took away, and Steve, please correct me on this, is defining that what a project is as versus operations, right? And that was always a big endeavor. So a lot of what we have listed as some of our first steps here, some of our choices as people come in, is to start having that conversation, having that consideration. And that was by design, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We are big believers in, concepts like mistake proofing and getting a full kit on the front end so that work can begin. And so, um, we tried to design this, and again, this is our 1.0. We're really excited for what this looks like, and it's already evolving too, with Progility's help. But the idea that, hey, let me put in the basics that I need to start working on something, and to start crafting my idea, start building my business case, and just let me off the hinges. Let me do what I need to do. Start building, my different plans. And so, um, yeah, on this screen specifically, you see kind of the person can really start documenting, what's the metadata around my project, but at the same time, not be hampered by that if it's still unclear, right? I think, the red asterisks denote, 3 different pieces of data just to create a shell and to start work. And so very unintrusive. We want to meet people where they're at in terms of their project, and how it's progressing. So we meant to have this to be something that you start small and then flesh out as it becomes, more clear.
So I'm just making a quick project here, and as you can see, with just the amount of time that Stephen was on there, I was able to actually go through and highlight some major components and even start documenting some of the project story. Now, none of this is also hard set. Some of this can also be modified, and that's something that we find ourselves doing quite a bit, is what we think is the original problem, and then as we dive further into it, what is the actual true problem? What is the actual true solution? So, this is an example of just emergency prep refresh for our particular office, our transformation office. And I'm gonna, put this as myself as the requester as we go through here. And just like that, we were able to have the initial project already started. Now, what's great about this is that we've also kind of devolved this into creating ideas and then into projects. So this is actually started as an idea. It's an idea that's been submitted. And as we go through and we start defining out who is the actual sponsor, who is the actual, um, problem, the solution, customer, and so forth, we can derive and look at all the other various ideas, and maybe we can start seeing those like-minded, um, ideas, and maybe there's a one central project. Let's say our transformation office is doing an emergency prep, but we're also looking over at our you know uh, retention and compliance office, and they're doing emergency prep work as well. So now that we have these 2 different eyes, maybe we can combine them, or maybe amalgamate them and creating a one mega project for handling both these, or they can maintain their own separate ones. What I've also liked is that we have this workflow that helps kind of control that intake, if you will, and making sure that we're not just having all those multiple projects being fired off without any type of central awareness or oversight by, let's say, an office of transformation. Um, when you're considered this workflow, Steve, what were some of the thoughts in this? You wanted to have a divisional insight, an executive approval, and then also one of the big things that I enjoy is actually consider a lot of the pre-work, that process the considerations, whether or not our IT has to be involved, if there is any known issues and, considerations to have.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted this to mirror, the process that we wanted. We really built this as a 2B, and PROJILITY and their great team helped us really think through, okay, what does that look like in terms of stage gates? And so we know that we wanted governance, right? I think that's a term that more and more people have on their minds as, we've got minimal, or I should say, finite resources, finite time. How do we make sure that projects that have the backing of our executive group and division leads, and we're actually charged or mandated to complete, how do we make sure that the important projects get the resources and move fast? And how do we make sure that there's line of sight to our executives and to our senior leaders to understand, which projects are progressing? And so really stage gating without being intrusive, right? Leveraging the Teams environment, leveraging approvals in Teams and then through Outlook, so that, don't make me log into another system, just have it pop up right in the Teams that I'm working in, or my email that I'm checking right now, and leverage those stage gates to let me know what's expected of me, because again, our folks at HHS, the vast majority are never going to have the title of project manager, but we need them to act like that occasionally. And so how can we help them to know what's expected in a project at a certain time, depending on the status?
Well, and just again, it is a very handy, useful tool and very intuitive. As you can see here, just in a few moments, I was able to create a few main tasks, start assigning them. If you don't mind, Steve, I'd like to kind of showcase one of our other projects that we have a little bit more defined that has been going on here, and just kind of show that you can go from that initial state into something much more robust. You highlighted being able to create those buckets. There's this particular project that I've created a while ago that highlights those various buckets, those Kanban boards. I know you're a big fan of that, right? It allows us to derive what are particular work streams or mindsets that we want to have. This is just one view of that. You also mentioned the ability to have that timeline, and this is another fantastic feature that I like within the project for the web, is to see how each of these various buckets would overlap into each other. And perhaps, even more simply, keep it as simple as possible if you wanted to, right? You don't have to go to that massive cross agency. You can keep something like our own data governance for our Office of Transformation to a simplified task, which I've liked quite a bit. I see that everybody got their tasks done there. Can easily make quick checklists to identify, set up some due dates, and also some dependencies as you liked. You can't start task A or you can't start task B until task A is done, right? So being able to have that ability to move around and shift. One of the other items that I've enjoyed directly out of these projects, and here's another version of that, is those risks, being able to highlight the various risks and keep them raised, and also drive that awareness not just to the team members but to you, like you as my boss and other executive leaders, so that there's that oversight and insight. Is there anything else that inside the project for the web that you particularly have been finding very diamond in the rough, an unexpected joy?
I think you hit my favorite, right? A day without Kanban boards is like a day without sunshine, I think is the thing. But what I really enjoy too is just, as new functionality is added to these different software platforms, right? Like Project for the Web, Project Web App, Power Automate Planner, whatever the case may be. New functionality continues to appear, and it doesn't directly impact or throw it off, right? It works seamlessly. So for example, Microsoft added, the ability to create a baseline in, or to track your baselines within Project for the Web recently. They also created the ability to track tasks assigned to goals. And so as we're very goal oriented in what we're trying to accomplish, the ability to have new functionality added without having to do a reinstall, without having to do a, completely uninstall and then bring in a new environment, because it's all web-based, I think has been incredibly powerful for us too.
Agree. And I know that we continue to have more and more of our agency leads and divisions and section leaders start, adding into this. And so, the other big item that we've, just briefly touched on is the ability to have that oversight, that report, if you will, across the entirety of the agency. Now, this is just a version of that, a mock-up of like my own reports, but being able to have that entire portfolio view you've mentioned has been another welcome addition, especially as our leadership is asking for questions on, where are we spending our time, how much is in flight, what is our intake. Now, I know that we're going a little over our time, and I again want to thank everybody for sitting with us. Stephen, thank you very much for having this conversation with me. I greatly appreciate your time, and thank you to the PROJILITY team for allowing us to have an opportunity here to highlight some of the work that we're doing here in North Dakota.
Hey, thank you, Ben. You're a heck of an MC, and yeah, a big thanks to PROJILITY for letting us talk about some stuff we're really excited about.
Annie, we could throw it back to you. Is there any other items or any questions that have popped up in the chat that Steve and I can help address at this time?
Yes, there actually are. And thanks to you both, lots to think about. We greatly appreciate the insight from both City of Auburn and North Dakota speakers. I think we all learned something new from hearing about your journeys with PPM across both traditional Microsoft project and the latest project for the web and the new planner solutions. We'll now open the floor to questions and answers. Remember to enter your questions in the question and answer manager at the top of your team screen. Let's see if there's any questions in the queue. There's a question here. Did you utilize any of the existing state project management processes when you were creating this for DHSS or DHHS?
Yeah, I can tackle that. We did. And we're even to this day, as we look at how we expand this, we want to make sure that we're in line with really how projects come to be across agencies, specifically with our NDIT sister agency who operates another system. And so definitely we're looking at right now even building out really what's the MVP, the minimum viable product you need to have for a project plan. And so more and more we want this to adhere to and kind of flow seamlessly through how a project becomes an idea, flows through the funding process or looking for grant dollars, and then begins some of the pre-work planning before maybe a procurement has happened, moves through some of that planning, and then finally when planning's completed, executing starts, and then closing it out. So we wanted to make sure that it matches what it really looks like in a state like North Dakota, who maybe has a biennial legislature that funds every 2 years. And so not only the fiscal part, but also the project management part, we wanted to make match and flow as opposed to stop and create constraint.
The next question is directed at both groups of speakers. For defining a project versus operations, what elements or metrics do you use to separate those? Is it calculated or human determined? Who wants to answer first?
Annie, I can take a swing at it. So metrics that we look at really are in our office, we're really concerned with looking at throughput, right? And so completion. What are in flight is great, but what are we completing? And that can be tasks. It can be completion of risk mitigation plan. It can be completion of a phase of maybe a 3-part phase of a project. And so we're looking at task completion. We're looking at I think everybody has to look at variance somewhat to see are we in line. One area that we really want to get a lot better at is looking at it in terms of budget variance. And so largely the system is separate. Our project for the web system is separate than our accounting system, right, which is a large enterprise resource management system that's operated by another agency. And so what we're looking at there is how can we pull that data from our ERP system or from our financial system into the project management system to at least give kind of an insight as invoices are paid, as bills are paid, as projects burn down or burn up their budget. Can we have that rectified and shown in the system? And then, piggybacking on that, what can we act accordingly if we're above, if we're below, if we have something that needs to stand out and get executive viewership or line of sight to specific to budget? How can we make that evident? And so those are things that I know Ben and I are thinking about now and taking a look at, what does that look like when we connect these systems?
Well, the other item that we find is that we're finding like-minded projects that maybe are coming from, different divisions and agency. And unfortunately, there are silos that occur within any large state agency. But a tool like this is helping us be able to, see past some of those, invisible walls and barriers. So, we can find that public health, for example, is doing an endeavor in action, and they're funded for that, whereas another part of our agency isn't, but they're trying to do something like-minded, and it would behoove us to have both of them coordinate and work together and have that shared um, responsibility of that project. So I think that in itself in the tool helps quite a bit with that high level visibility across the landscape.
And I think on the City of Auburn side, kind of fairly similar story. Just for us, the reporting layer tends to be the layer where those points of data interact with each other to bring that kind of operational, particularly on the financial side, story together with the project execution side of the story.
Chris and team, maybe to rephrase the question, how do you determine what is a project versus operations?
Are you talking about like expenditures wise or scope or both?
I'm not sure. Keith, maybe you could follow up on that.
I would say like when a project idea is submitted, if it's for something like a facility like our Lake Wilmore Community Center that we showed off on the website, the submitting document or also has like where you can put in what you think the operational cost would be. So when we finish it, it's staffing it, it's utilities, it's supplies, and any other commodities we may need.
We have one final question for both presenters. Are you using time entry or timesheets within project to track progress on projects? Any insight on the pros/cons you found in assessing that decision to use or not to use timesheets in a project?
I can answer that for North Dakota Health and Human Services. We do not use that. We have our own time entry system, time and labor system, but largely the folks that are going to be using the system are HHS employees. And so if anything, if they're charging time to a grant or something like that, we do have the ability to build that in for quick reporting out to our financial system if we need it. We found that the vast majority of projects haven't required that, that time entry or the ability to say, hey, how many hours were spent on this task. It's usually an all or nothing. So a project entered in the system that's funded by a grant, we would assume that all of those employees and the time that they're working on or the portion thereof would flow to that. But what we have found is if we do need to pull in folks to, that may be working on a grant, we need to charge back time. Quick ways to do that is to create a new field, and then because our project for the web, we have the ability to add any number of custom fields that can be yes, no, multiple choice, text, numeric values. Quick way to do that is to just have a grant funded or have a pull down value for that grant, and then we can pull that in reporting pretty quickly. So I believe, if we're an agency that more employed project managers, and we needed to charge that back to different accounting codes and different funds. Definitely be a different spot. But for right now, we haven't needed that too extensively.
And the same story for the City of Auburn. It's not been a need, so we've not attempted to burden project managers or other resources with tracking their time at that level.
Well, thank you, everyone. Next up is a highly requested presentation at PROJILITY. We get a lot of questions as to the best ways to prepare for PPM system deployment. We're joined today by Rob Hirschman, partner at PROJILITY. Rob has worked over the past 20 plus years to assist with driving solid enterprise level project and portfolio management solutions for clients across different industries ranging from federal, state, and local government agencies to manufacturing, engineering, construction, healthcare organizations. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Annie. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome, guy. Thanks, and we appreciate everybody's presentations today. Fun fact, I guess we're all doing fun facts here. I actually played the drums in a 90s and 2000s rock cover band. We've got our first gig in this new band next Tuesday. You can see in the picture of me there, I actually have a drum in my hand under my arm. So fun fact, I've actually been with PROJILITY since 2005. So it's been a while. But in today's presentation, we get a lot of folks asking, what are some good practices? We're planning a deployment of this technology. What do we really need to think about? Is there a checklist we can address, or can you give me some pointers and tips and tricks? So what we did is we sat down with a bunch of our consultants who've been doing this for years, as well as some of our clients, and asked them very targeted questions about, what do you need to do to plan for one of these deployments with whichever technology you're using, PWA or Project for the Web. So what we've done is we put together kind of consolidated presentation here for the next couple minutes to spell out the different phases and the considerations during each phase, talk about what the planning recommendations are by phase, and then give you some kind of consolidated good practices. So as you're thinking about going down this road, or maybe you're already down the road, what are some things you can maybe change or adapt that can help drive towards success with your implementation? So with that, let's start out with the different phases we typically see in these implementations. The first one is really implementation preparation. And that's where you're actually thinking about or preparing for, or doing analysis. What are we going to be implementing? Why are we going to be implementing it? Who are we going to be implementing it for? And what is really our plan or a roadmap for that implementation? The second stage is the actual implementation of the technology itself, where you are sitting down with a team of individuals to actually do the technology implementation, the configuration, creating of reports, and all the things related to that. So you have a technology in place to reflect your process. The third stage is always training, and kind of going at this without a solid training approach and a communication approach is really leads to not successful deployments of these technologies. But think of training as a key phase of an implementation. And then probably the most important one, the transition and adoption phase. That's where you're actually, the rubber meets the road. You're actually going about working with the system with your end users. So what we'll do is, as we go through the next couple of slides, we'll be walking you through what these different phases are, but more importantly, what feedback, what can you do to properly plan for your implementation, no matter where you are in your life cycle. This input came again from some PMO leaders we spoke to over the last 6 months who have driven Project Online and now Project for the Web, or the new Planner Premium, over the last couple of years, as well as talking with our implementation consultants who have an average of about 7 years of implementing these solutions. So when you start thinking about some of the key actions and planning to begin your PPM journey, we typically see there are about 5 pillars you need to start considering. The first one within the implementation preparation phase is communication, and communicating the intent of implementing your solution early, the why you're going to be doing it, the business reason or the business purpose that the folks at HHS talked about, and getting feedback on the concerns for some of your end user community, as well as some of your stakeholders. That may be a consideration in terms of the cultural shift you're going to be going through. This input fosters the buy-in early. It fosters the buy-in as you drive adoption. It gets people engaged. It gives them a stake in the process. So really that communication and really communicating what you're going to be doing and why you're going to be doing it is probably the key pillar here. Then on the business process change area, what you heard from the folks both at Auburn and North Dakota is they had business processes in place already. They just didn't have consolidated systems to manage those. So making sure you've got some kind of a business process in place and decisions on that are made early on before you implement the technology. You don't have to have the whole thing blown out, but you know about how you want to do things and who some of the key players are, even if it's in a big Visio diagram. So you're not having to gather that information as you're starting to plan out the system. It becomes 2 projects instead of 1. And you want to make decisions also on the third pillar here about who will administer and manage the day-to-day upkeep of your project management system. This is really important. Is it someone in the PMO? Is it someone with a business background? Is it someone in IT, or a combination of those? That's going to influence how your users will adapt to the tool and who they will go to for support. You want to make sure those people have really good communication skills, good people skills, because just like anything with project management, it's all about communication. You also want to start thinking about making a plan for your current in-flight projects that you're going to be addressing during the rollout. You may be rolling the system out in February or March of 2025, but you're going to have 10, 15, maybe 50 or 100 projects that are going to be in flight at that point. And you want to start thinking about, are we going to be moving some of those into the system? Are we going to be determining a line in the sand? Any project that starts after a certain date is going to finish in the old system and we'll start in the new. Having a really good plan for those in-flight projects is important, and maybe driving a pilot around that with a certain subset of your users. And finally, really being informed about the full functionality of what to focus on, and importantly, what not to focus on in your PPM deployment. You know, PPM system has between 9 and 15 different business process areas or functions, which you see on the screen here. Everything from your project intake and demand management to your governance controls, to doing resource planning, as you heard from some of the folks, to everything from your reporting and dashboards, really focusing on what you're going to do, what you're not going to do in your implementation can really lead to greater success here. And then also you want to start thinking about doing a smaller implementation, not going kind of full bore and enterprise-wide initially, but start in 3 or 4 business areas with 3 or 4 functions or business processes here that can provide the most value to your organization. So even before you start implementing the technology, you want to think about, what are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? Why are we going to do it? And who are some of the key stakeholders? Also, as we start talking about the implementation preparation, importantly, you want to be very, very honest about where you are in terms of what your requirements are, what you need to do, and what's your desired end state, and what you can realistically do from an operations and maturity perspective. If you're uncertain about this, you want to be really, really purposeful with an iterative approach and start with, hey, let's do these 3 or 4 things and let's drive it to these 15 users. Let's get their projects in the system, get a really good feel for it, and then grow and adopt and change that over time. As Ben mentioned, these systems are very flexible now. They're web-based. The technology just works. So some specific areas behind this to give you some experience, we've heard from our clients, to what extent will resources be shared or dedicated to specific parts of your organization? Are you going to be doing portfolio management? And what does that mean? Is that strategic or operational, or just need a roll-up of all my projects? Or I really want to get data-driven with this? Do you have common definitions across the organization of the different things like workflow stages and health status and risks? Things like, how consistent do your project managers create and manage project schedules? Because as Steve mentioned, a lot of it's just about task management, the level of detail, the resource allocation, the effort behind that. And importantly, the second one here, if you have any policies or procedures that have to change, think about when you're going to do that and how you're going to do it. Be very, very mindful and thoughtful about how you're going to do that as it relates to the rollout. Changing your process and changing the tool at the same time can happen as long as those things are well aligned, communicated, and you're training people. But if you change the tool and then you change the process later, you may have to go back and change the tool again. So really think about kind of the ordering of things between process and tool here. And finally, the third one, which is very, very important, you want to think about building a core team that really understands how your system is set up and also understands the business decisions that need to be made and the roles of everybody in your process going forward. That core team is really going to drive the decision making, and you want to make sure you have representatives from different parts of the business or IT or different program areas so you get their feedback, so you help, again, drive that use and adoption. And now we're just talking about planning the implementation. So now you're ready to implement the solution. The pre-project planning has been done. At this stage, we typically find there are several key factors that are most successful project management systems deployments and projects include. One of the key ones here is identifying what we call a steering committee for the new solution. And it could just be 2 or 3 people. It includes a handful of decision makers who are representative of the organizational areas that are going to be impacted by the solution. At HHS, they include people probably from the business. At Auburn, it might have been people in finance and IT. So it really depends on what you're trying to roll it out for and what groups. You want to make sure the steering committee, the participants' workload allow for adequate participation, that they actually have availability when you need them to plan and deliver the project, so they have a voice in it. And it's not an everyday voice. It's a beginning, middle end, and also helping with some of the communication strategy for some of your end users. You also want to allow adequate time for the implementation processes, things like requirements and design, and sitting down and being thoughtful about that, coming up with a good design for a solution, the build and validate stage, the training stage, You also want to think, as we talked about, use a lot of the native functionality in these tools, using things like custom fields, as Steve and Ben mentioned, or project detail pages, as you saw a little bit in Auburn, or for the most part, stick to what the core system can do, because most of the time it's more than you need, and then work with your partner to actually limit it down to exactly what you need it to do, right? Try to do more with less, ideally. You'll also want to make sure your core resources, and this is the big one in the middle, are available when you need them and dedicate time to the project to support the analysis, the requirements, the testing, and the training and the rollout. One of our clients said, quote, "I could see that our time and not the partners was the biggest risk in a timely implementation. And that testing often takes longer than you think, getting users on the calendar and getting them to actually see the system and understand what's going into it before you roll it out." You also want to make a plan for your in-flight projects, as we mentioned. How do you want to take documentation and move it into your new system? What are your templates going to look like? How do you want to show the history of what you've done and what you're going to do, or what you did in the old system? How do you want to capture new data and new ideas? And how are you going to move existing things like hours into the project, into the system? And finally, the big one at the bottom, it's going to take time to make decisions. When you sit down with your partner, you'll go through requirements, you go through design. Your consultant's going to ask you a lot of questions about the implementation. How do you want to do things? What is your process? What if we did this, or what if we did that? You really plan for time, and it may only take a week to get through requirements, but you're talking another 1, 2, 3 weeks to make the decisions that influence the actual design of the system. They're going to influence the actual build out of that application. So decision time becomes a key factor, and building in enough time into your schedule and your partner's schedule to make sure it's successful. Okay? So you've got the system implemented. Now you're talking about moving into the training phase of your effort. And there are several factors that most successful organizations adopt and plan for. It's not just about training your users, but also how you're going to train them, what you will train them on, and how you will reinforce the training on an ongoing basis. So after they start using the system, you're there after that to continue to provide them with the knowledge transfer they need. You don't want to underestimate the need for Microsoft Project Desktop or scheduling training, so you can level set the organization on scheduling expectations. We talk to a lot of organizations and everybody's like, I know Microsoft Project. Everybody knows it in different ways, on different flavors based on their experience. You're going to have a common understanding of how schedules are built, how resources are tracked, set expectations for things like performance management and percent complete. In this solution, everything starts and ends with having a good, well-planned schedule, whether it's 5 or 500 tasks. So providing your project managers with a really solid foundation and continuing education is really key to successful decision-making. They're owners of a lot of data in the system. You also want to think about establishing a training schedule that includes a lot of one-to-one sessions for new users, helping them get their project information into the system after the system is live, walking them through how to create and update and manage the tasks in the system, because this is going to be their own information. They're going to manage it on a day-to-day basis. Again, they are the owners of the system. We always recommend role-based training, the one on the top right here, for everyone who's going to be using the system. For your project managers, we definitely recommend getting training to precede the go live date. So before you're live with the solution, as part of your training and adoption, you really want them going in and actually learning to use the tool in a consistent way with their peers in the room or an online meeting. And due to knowledge retention issues, people don't really remember anything anymore because they're working on so much. Training should always be as close to your go live date as possible. That's some of the feedback one of our clients shared. An interesting one is the one in the middle, delaying training for key managers. For executives, resource managers, portfolio managers, you may want to think about delaying the training well after your go live date by at least a month is one of the recommendations. This will allow your team enough time to get information accumulated in your new system, so it's useful for them to be accessed when you're training them on how they can use and view the data. Otherwise, it might be a blank environment or have sample data in it. Training for executives, by the way, should be brief, less than an hour. Executives love pictures. They love diagrams. They don't like 2 and 3 hour meetings. So think about not only delaying training, but keeping it very, very focused on just what they need to make decisions. If possible, during training, make sure your training material maps to your organization's processes. This is an important one. We recommend that every organization that has the processes procedures have some kind of a schedule on who does what and when with the training throughout the entire project. One client actually shared with us, for example, an organization can mandate that team members must enter their updates on a weekly basis. PMs have to go in daily, team members have to go in weekly, and then they'd submit their updates every Friday because status is going to be run every Monday. The organization could mandate this kind of a process and set aside Monday morning for the PMs to go in and review and update that information, clean it up, because they are going to need to change and clean things. And then maybe Monday afternoon is when everything gets published and the reports go out. So really coming up with that and then training people on who does what, when they do it, and how they're going to do it in the actual application. The training being a core component These are some recommendations as you're planning for your rollout. As you move from training into the what we call transition and adoption phase, this is really where the system has been configured and tested, and users have been trained. And in this, we're typically seeing there are 4 key success components to driving successful transition and adoption. The first thing is understanding your current project management culture very, very well, planning for small incremental wins. Don't try to boil the ocean with a massive initial shift. Lay the groundwork to scale it up. Start very simple, but plan for scaling based on your maturity. Now, your project managers may be really good at scheduling, but they may not be very good at planning people's time and resource work. Something you need to think about and consider. Having a third-tier support mechanism can prove to be a good lifeline that you can throw out there as your solution goes live. You don't want your partner just disappearing on day one as soon as you're live. As your plans become practice and practice becomes day-to-day management, adjustments may need to be made quickly and expertly to keep the momentum in a positive direction. You want to make a transition plan for the new and transitioning off the old well in advance. And here are some interesting quotes we got from some of our clients, things they said they would have done different the second time around. Quote, one of the things I would have done differently would have actually added another 4 weeks to the implementation to have our partner actually stay along as we stabilized the product and got our team up to snuff. We had been recommended this, but we figured we would take that on. And keeping the implementation team on for a couple of extra weeks can make a huge difference in making sure that onboarding is successful. Another one said we would also schedule more time into our project to manage the transition as opposed to just running around and catching up with it as if it was another project. To strengthen that adoption process with both your project managers and team members, one of our clients said, I'd recommend that every organization establish processes and procedures that govern the schedule on who does what and when. An example could be, organization can mandate the day of the week status is run, as we mentioned before, or the days of the week, every project manager must be logging in the system Monday, Wednesday, Friday to review and provide their updates. As an organization can start to mandate these kind of opportunities, then you'll get more standardization of the data and it'll be more consistent in terms of the outputs you're going to be getting, and you're going to get better data to make decisions. So transition and adoption is one of the most important of those 4 phases. And you really want to consider, how do you drive successful use and adoption? This was some feedback we received. Okay. So just some final takeaways, walking you through how do you successfully plan for one of these project management rollouts. And you heard this from the folks both at Auburn and HHS, really focus on the business problem you're trying to solve. Why are we implementing a new solution? What business value is it going to provide to the organization? Don't try to do too much. You want to build a plan prior to rolling the solution out that thinks about all 4 phases. And as you're working with your management team, sell all the phases from the start. You may want to be budgeting just for the planning and implementation now, but you also want to think about next year's budget and what you might be doing then for a phase 2, 3, and 4, at least getting support during that phase so you can start to really think through the next iteration of your technology. You want to organize that key team of stakeholders right from the beginning, the folks that are going to be involved, whether it's your stakeholder committee, or it's the actual people that are going to be providing feedback and the requirements, or a combination of both. Make sure they're available when you need them during the project. Make sure they have time, or that can add risk to how long it's going to take to implement your technology. And you don't want them coming back and saying, well, had I seen it before, I would have given this feedback. You had your chance when we were planning this. Realize the tools are just a bigger part of a larger change process you have going on, and plan for this. You're looking to, really re-engineer parts of how you do things, or you may be really comfortable with the current process, but you are going to change things as you start to see what the system can do, as you saw from both the clients that spoke today. Also, as both of them mentioned, you want to really think about engaging some expert resources like a project management partner that have been there and done that with these systems before. It can really help you reduce the risk, speed the deployment, and make sure you're being very thoughtful with the decisions you're making versus just plopping the technology in and kind of hoping it works the way you want it to. As Steve mentioned, I think, or it might have been Ben, technology is really the easy part here. The harder part is making key decisions about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it in the technology. This is all commercial off-the-shelf Microsoft software, which can be configured. So to really think about and be thoughtful around, using the technology in the right way for good and not evil, as we say. And finally, plan for this as a 1 to 2 year journey initially. It's going to take you that long to really not only get a system deployed, but also get people to use it and adopt it and adapt your processes and adapt systems around that to what you're looking to do. And people will always ask, well, when can I start trusting the data, or consider, when am I going to have data for good reporting? We typically say on average, it takes between 3 and 6 months to get the first data into the system after go live that you can really trust and rely on for your reports. The reports will publish on day one. That's not the problem. It's getting people to follow the process on a scheduled basis and make sure you can trust that data where you go into a status meeting, red, yellow, and green mean red, yellow, and green because everybody's doing it in a consistent way. They have a consistent understanding based on how you've trained them and how you're supporting them. So these are just some final takeaways for you as you go down the road of thinking about implementing a project management solution, whether it's project online, project for the web, new planner, really doesn't make a difference. Either system can be driven to success. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor back to Annie, and Annie, we can get into some question and answer now.
Thanks, Rob. Super presentation and content. Let's see if there's any questions in the queue for Rob, or we can continue on. If there are no questions for Rob, I guess we can move on. Now on to the fun. Before we wrap up, we are raffling off a couple project-specific items. In order to be eligible to win, you must complete a short survey, which will be sent in a link in our follow-up event email. Enter for a chance to win a cute Hammerhead plushie or a copy of our latest book release, Ultimate Study Guide for Microsoft Project 2019. We'll be sending all attendees a link to our survey. By filling it out, you'll be registering for the drawing. Winners will be chosen at random tomorrow, so please submit your surveys in the next 24 hours. If you or anyone in your organization is looking for help or guidance with Project, the new planner, or the Microsoft PPM platform, at whatever stage you are in, do reach out. PROJILITY provides planning, deployment, and support services around these applications to help you successfully deploy based upon your organization's specific needs and drive improved use and adoption. Additionally, you can visit our website, which has a series of blogs, as well as our YouTube channel that includes tons of great videos and topics related to Project, the new planner, Power Platform, and PPM. You can also visit the Project and Planner LinkedIn group, one of the largest online communities for these solutions, which has almost 28,000 members. Reach out via email, info@PROJILITY.com, if you'd like to talk about your specific needs. Thank you again for joining the conference today. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you online for our next session. Have a great day. Thank you.